You're watching the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. Now it's time for the Brent and Austen Show.
Well, that shot looks a little bit different than it did a day ago, and here she comes, or he comes, in Hurricane Milton, and I think it's going a little bit more south, though, at the last check. Of course, you can check out all the weather with our First Alert weather team, ActionNewsJax.com. Don't forget to get the Action News Jax app, and by the way, when you're on the app, you can see a little weather, see a little news, see a lot of sports, too, on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. You can do that on ActionNewsJax.com as well, and watch it on the big TV. On Action News Jax now on your smart TV from your living room. And I know a lot of folks are home. Little habits are off the next couple of days because most folks probably are inside and off work for these next couple to few days. So stay safe out there. Not off work is us. Although sports does get canceled a little bit around here. The days aren't as long these last couple and even tomorrow with no Jaguars All Access. We've canceled Jags Social, other shows like that. And the work doesn't stop out in Las Vegas because it's beautiful in the desert, is my guess. What the heck is the temperature out there, Austen Lane?
Probably like 100 degrees. It's been like record temperatures out here. Oh yeah, it was like 100 something yesterday. It's they broke the record I think yesterday by like 3 degrees. So it's been super hot here. Seems like summertime. Does not seem like pumpkin spice season and all that stuff. Thankfully, I don't like pumpkin spice. But yeah, wow. It's been summertime over here in Las Vegas.
Wow, I didn't know it would still be that hot in October. I knew it could get hot, but obviously you're talking about record heat, and we're just not even in tune with the rest of the world. I just talked to my folks and people up north in the last day or so. They said it was 44 degrees in Massachusetts this morning. So I was like, oh, it's here. It's turned. Yeah. You know, I was like, I don't want that. Kaylee's actually up in Georgia. She evacuated from Daytona. And her roommates, one of them's from Georgia, so she just went up there with them. And she texted us yesterday. She's like, it's 62 here. This is beautiful. I'm going to move here. So
that sounds legit.
Yeah. She's like, there are leaves falling from the trees. I was like, what is that? What is that? That doesn't happen. Done. We saw 3 leaves fall the other day, and I was like, hey, welcome to fall. You just missed it.
Yeah. It's gone. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. But you do have to rake those leaves. Don't forget. So I guess you don't have to in the desert. And you don't have to right around here as well. So everybody stay safe. But we've actually got some folks from Tampa in the area at our house. I got like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at my house right now. It's it's kind of it's actually kind of fun. I feel like a grandparent here already. I'm not, but I feel like a grandparent. But it's actually kind of fun. I don't think our house. You know what's funny about your house? Like goes from being childproof, right? Where you got to do all the stuff with the door. Yep. And then when you're not, it's very noticeable that you're not. Like I almost pulled an oblique the other day trying to like catch the kid from falling. Which means I must not be in parent shape anymore either. All right, the Jaguars head to London tomorrow. That has not changed. The Chicago Bears go to London today. We'll visit, we think, with Clay Harbor, who covers, he obviously pays attention to the Jags, covers the Chicago Bears up there in the Chicago area, even a little Philly. So he was always hitting on those 3 teams when we talked to Clay in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what he says about Chicago. And this is a good day to get into the Chicago side of things. I think this is a sneaky good team, Austen. You look at where the schedule came out and we looked at this run where Indianapolis, Chicago, New England, we're like, okay, that's like the manageable part of the schedule. Later in the year, it gets manageable as well. I think the Chicago team is not great, but definitely better than I think people have their maybe senses set on. This is a better football team than you probably think. They're 3-2. Caleb Williams is playing better football. And again, I go back to the defense. I think their defense has been really good going all the way back to like last December. Start thinking about when the Jags collapsed last year. About that time is when the defense of the Bears really started to shift. The one thing you can do against Chicago, at least teams have been able to do this year so far, is run the football. So the Jaguars going to London will need to pound the rock a little bit.
So it's kind of an interesting matchup because these teams parallel each other a little bit in terms of, I think, when the schedule came out, in terms of getting in, well, at least we thought, getting into the easier part of the schedule, right? Because if you look at the Bears right now, they play the Rams, and the Rams could be a playoff team, but the Rams, Panthers, Jaguars, and then the Washington Commanders, and now obviously the Washington Commanders are a pretty damn good team, but I don't think anyone really saw that coming in terms of how good Jaden Daniels could be right off the get-go. So I think these are two teams that kind of have this stretch of games circled on their list where it's okay, this is where we can gain our momentum. This is where we can have some success. And you have two teams that have kind of found their offensive rhythm in the last game due to playing, an inferior defense on both sides. The biggest difference, though, I think both offenses have playmakers. Both offenses can take the top off. I think both offenses, I give the advantage to the Jaguars in terms of running the football, but when Swift's in there, he's doing okay. But the biggest difference right now is the defenses, right? Where you have a Bears defense that their secondary is pretty dang good. It's hard to pass against them. Yes, you can run on them, but you have a Jaguars defense that is extremely porous right now in the secondary. And that could be problems when you have a guy like Caleb Williams who is starting to gain confidence now. That could be problems when you have a very explosive and dynamic player in DJ Moore that can take the top off, right? I mean, if we saw Alex Pierce and Joe Flacco do that, what will it look like against the Bears offense, who I'm a little more scared of than the Colts offense right now?
Yeah, I think you just hit. It is a fascinating matchup in a lot of respects because you'll say the passing defense is really good, and it is of Chicago, and then you'll see Caleb Williams is really good, or he's playing better, or he can be dangerous, and especially against his secondary, if you keep plays alive, which he can do, and then make the off-platform kind of throws, which seems very dangerous against the Jags right now, and really probably against any team, but right now, especially against the Jags with the amount of busts they are giving up. But then you say, well, the reason why he's on the run and off platform is because their offensive line can be just okay, very much just okay. So can the Jags get some pressure, create some pressure? And then you're almost like, well, don't let them just run around back there because that seems like it's dangerous time against the Jags secondary. So it's just a lot of mental gymnastics with this game. The bottom line, you just said something, the disparity is amazing if you look at some of the metrics and numbers on the defensive secondary. The secondary of the Bears right now, in I know some of your favorite categories. I just saw a chart yesterday. They were number one, all right? The Jags are 32. That's all you need to know. I mean, there was a metric where it said Jaguars for secondary and corners and all that, 1 and 32. Bears 1, Jags 32. I don't know if that area actually, I get it impacts the game, Austen. I've never really looked at a football game and said, wow, you have the best secondary in the league, perhaps, and you have the worst secondary in the league, perhaps. Is that going to turn the game in somebody's favor or not?
I mean, so what's the metric? It's just giving up big plays, giving up yards. Do we not just? It
was one of those EPA PFF type. It was just honed in on not the whole defense, but it was just honed in on the secondary. And I didn't even know they did. Okay. Listen, man, there's stuff out there. I don't even know what the hell half of it means. But I also think,
I hear you.
Here's what I say about that stuff. When you can see it with your eyes as well, right? What are we talking about this week in Jacksonville? The secondary. What did I ask you yesterday? How do you fix the secondary? How are they going to be able to do it? Yeah. What are they going to adjust? What's the answer? And we do know, you just started this with, hey, Chicago secondary are really good. They don't allow a lot of passing yards. So yeah. when those kind of charts and graphs also measure up with what our eyes say, I give it more credence. It doesn't matter what it means. We know kind of, okay, that's what it is. There are some charts where it's hey, Trevor's not really leading the league in stats, but he's got the number 4 EPA, right? Something like that. Then it becomes a little more muddy, and people are leaning it, and maybe there's a little spin involved. But the bottom line is, do you think how much does a good secondary impact the football game from a win-loss standpoint? It certainly impacts the way you can play, but does it impact a win-loss standpoint in this game? Is it going to be the difference at Tottenham on Sunday in this football game?
I mean, it could very well be the difference just because we talk about secondaries and we talk about the big plays, right? And nothing can kill your momentum or gain your momentum, depending on who we're talking about here, like a big play, in the passing game. It's going to be ideal for the Jaguars to pound the rock, I think, kind of establish the line of scrimmage, maybe a big dose of Tank Bigsby again, so be it. But, in terms of the analytics and everything, here's all you have to know about the Bears and Jaguars defenses. The Jaguars give up around over 100 yards more per game than the Bears defense does. That's it. 100 yards more. That's a lot, right? I think the Bears, in terms of team defense, is like, I think they're 7 or 8, and the Jaguars, well, they aren't. They're 30th in some, categories, 31st. They're the bottom of the league, right? So, yeah, that glaring stat to me is everything, because it's like I said. I mean, both teams I think can kind of run the football. I think the Jaguars have the advantage there. Cool. Both teams can take the top off. Both teams can be dynamic. All this stuff. What it comes down to is the defense. So if I'm Doug Peterson right now, and I go, okay, I mean, do I really want to get in a track meet with DJ Moore, with Rome Odunze, with Keenan Allen, if they're all playing? Probably not. So maybe you worry about the clock a little more. It felt like that Colts game, Gus Bradley was giving you a lot, right? So you took advantage of that, and it was a track meet, right? And then once again, it was a track meet with Alec Pierce and a bunch of other guys who maybe aren't household names, but, became household names in that Jaguars game. This will be different, Brent. And this is almost more like I felt like with the Houston Texans. Now, when the Jaguars played the Texans, yeah, Nico Collins had a big day and everything, but for the most part, the Jaguars secondary kept them in it, right? And that's the most important part. But to me, it's complementary football. If you're a defense, you keep your team in it when your offense starts running the football, controlling the clock a little more, because you don't want to go 3 and out, putting your defense behind the 8 ball a little bit. And now they're gassed. Now we can't get Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen on the field like we want them. They're rotating in. There's no pressure on Caleb Williams. And it's like a house of cards where it all falls apart.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, were you talking to Ty? As Ty was telling me that, he said just about the same thing. He's like, I think this is a game they're going to have to control the clock, which the Jags have not done yet. You got to have it can be an efficient day for Trevor. It might be 185 yards passing, 200 yards passing. It doesn't have to look like 371. I think the most that's passed against Chicago this year, I think I looked it up, with Stroud at 260 this year. I think he had 260 yards. So it's been tough to do against them. But he kind of said the same. It does feel like that control the tempo of the game. The problem with that for Jacksonville right now is they suck at third down conversions. That's it. They suck at it. They're not good at it. They haven't been good at it all year. They haven't been good at it going back to last year. They are not that team that right now is converting a bunch. They've had a couple of series, or at least spells in games against Houston, where I think they had 3 third down conversions in a row. And then the other day in a game, remember, they went 14 plays and 8 minutes, but I think even one of those was a fourth down conversion. So, they're just not good at third downs. And if you have a good Bears defense, usually those good defenses are very good at defending third downs. Just to talk about the Bears a little bit more on defense, here's what they've done. They've allowed 10 points, 18 points, 21 points, 19 points, and 17 points this season. But I want to go back to last year a little bit, because, again, I'm not a big fan of Eberflus. I haven't been. But I think he's figured it out on the defensive side. They gave up 17 to Green Bay in the season finale. Prior to that, it was 17, 16, 20, 28 to Detroit is about the most they've given up, and that's all the way back on December 10th of last year. You keep going now, 10 points, and then you got to get to Detroit, where they gave up 31, then Carolina 13, New Orleans. All right, then it starts to get a little bit different, 24-30. So really, outside of Detroit, since last November, everybody's been 20 points or less for the Chicago defense. So they are playing, again, it starts last year and last December. Now over a 10, 11, 12 game span. Again, outside of the Lions, who obviously have a good offense, they've been able to figure out the Chicago Bears defense a little bit better than most. So that's what we're dealing with. This is a game, you're right, where it's probably going to have to flow back and forth, and both sides are going to have to get it done. And if you know a game's going to be just about 20 points, well, the Jags defense has to do its job. The Jags defense has not been dynamically great by any sense of the imagination, but they have held Miami to 20 points, held Cleveland to 18 points. Even Houston, what did that game finish up, 24? Yeah, 24 points to Houston. They are going to have to live in that neighborhood, I think, to give the Jaguars a chance in this football game, because I just don't see the Jags offense coming off a 37-pointer. But this was a Jags offense averaging in the teens over the last 10-game stretch, remember. So until we see it again, I don't have full confidence that the Jags are going out and scoring 30 against the Chicago Bears on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to fathom, to be able to do that. And this is the classic example, Brent, of a team with Eberflus who is playing complementary football, right? Like when you have a rookie quarterback who, I don't want to say he looks shaky or anything, but like obviously, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to pick up on when you're a young quarterback in this league, and you have a defense that can, win the turnover margin, number one, but number two, get the offense that they're going against off the field pretty quickly with three and outs, and give that quarterback an opportunity in Caleb Williams to, get more plays in. And I think when you have that complementary team like the Chicago Bears, it's a formula for a hard game. And it's wild that we're talking about it because, once again, I think when we broke this thing down to start the season, this game wasn't like, maybe it was different for you because I think you had the Bears going to the playoffs. This game wasn't a factor for me. Like I thought, okay, you're playing in the UK. Hopefully you win one or two games coming off those, those first four or whatever. And then you go to the UK and, you kind of find your momentum a little bit. You play the Patriots and the Bears, two teams last year that I think a lot of people slept on, rightfully so. And now you have a Bears team that has quietly gone under the radar since November of maybe having the number one overall team defense since November. Has gone under the radar of just how good they are. And then when you pair that now with a new quarterback, some new offensive weapons, you're starting to see a team gain confidence. So you have two teams right now that have gained confidence. You have two teams right now that are feeling really good and are kind of, crescendoing up in the right direction. Now it's like, all right, something has to give here. And if you're the Jaguars, how do you stop the Bears from keeping that momentum?
Yeah, it's a really good point what you bring up. Even I did think Chicago was going to make some noise. It was a nice little pick it's really been a sexy pick, I think, for them to make a big jump this year with all the weapons that they have on offense. I wasn't like all in on Caleb Williams either, but obviously you knew he was going to have talent, and I love the way they set him up on offense overall. Plus you marry that with the defense, that what they're doing. But the difference I thought when the schedule came out was that the Jags were going to be a lot better. Right? I didn't see the Jags being 1-4. And so that's the part that's really changed the story for me. Now, one thing that hasn't changed for me, I don't know if we can sit here and count. I don't care who they're playing because we know this is how the league works. I never really thought the season would unravel where they would just automatically win 2 games in London. I don't think we can get used to that just because it happened last year, right? And it was a much harder deal last year. If you really put it on paper, they had to play Atlanta and Buffalo, and they were able to sweep them. This year looks way easier on paper, but I still don't the way the NFL works, I even now I have a hard time. I don't even know what I'm doing this week of this game. I kind of feel like Chicago's going to win. I feel like the Jags are going to win the Patriots game, but I just feel like a split here is kind of the way it's going to be mapped out because of the way the NFL works. But the Jags are playing maybe with a little bit more urgency than they normally would be in this spot because of the situation they're in. So we'll see how it all matches up. The one other thing about this game, not one, but the fascinating, the headliner, the reason why I think they love this game and NFL Network's going to pump this up is you get Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence. And
yeah.
You said it. Caleb Williams playing a little bit better, but I mean, he had a great game against Carolina. So did the Jags in their 10-game stretch where they had lost 9 of them, right? So the Jags won that game without Trevor Lawrence last year against Carolina. While Carolina might be a shade better, they're not a lot better. What do you see from Caleb Williams? How dangerous is he, or is he the opportunity now against a rookie quarterback to really go get some of those turnovers that the Jaguars have been lacking?
If you look at his numbers, they're rookie numbers, right? Like I think you see Jaden Daniels' numbers. It's like, wow, this guy is amazing. And you see Caleb Williams. It's like, yeah, that makes a little more sense in terms of, being a first-year guy in the NFL, trying to be a quarterback and everything. But I think you're seeing, once again, this is kind of that game against the Panthers where also you're getting a little more confidence now, right? And you saw what the Bears tried to do, right? You may have failed a little bit with Justin Fields because what Justin Fields is doing now in Pittsburgh, and that's with Arthur Smith, who might be the worst coordinator to have in terms of fantasy football, because you just never know what that guy's going to do. He might run it 50 times a game. It's crazy that Arthur Smith still has jobs sometimes, I feel like, in the NFL. Nevertheless, when we talk about Caleb Williams, this is a guy who can scramble in the pocket, who can create plays, who's made a couple of those plays already, those highlights, if you will. And it does make you a little nervous with his ability to create plays with his legs, but also run for 15, 20 yards a pop if he has to. And I think if we've seen, this Jaguars defensive line, while it's played better in terms of getting after the quarterback last week with Joe Flacco, there have been some holes in terms of quarterbacks being able to expose and picking up those first downs, picking up, those long yardages in terms of rushing the football. Joe Flacco had 20, yards or 22 yards rushing on one play. I'll repeat myself. Joe Flacco had 22 yards rushing, which is something I never thought I would say in a sentence, let alone during the twilight of his career, is unreal to me. So if you're allowing Joe Flacco to escape the pocket and get 20-something yards, what can Caleb Williams do? So, in terms of the pass rushing plan, yeah, we have to see Josh Allen get home. We have to see Trayvon Walker get home. But there has to be a plan set up now. Almost like, it reminds me like a little bit like maybe like an Aaron Rodgers or Mahomes, where it's like, and I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is that caliber of quarterback, obviously, but what I'm saying is in terms of to dance around in the pocket, to create plays, or to take off if you truly has to, you got to keep him in front of you, So if you do go more zone coverage, Brent, here, you got to make sure that, hey, eyes on Caleb Williams. If you do run pass rush games in the defensive line, which I'm sure you're gonna, you got to make sure that you still stay home and have your gap accordingly. Because the last thing you want to do is on 3rd and long is let Caleb Williams escape for a nice run. It's a first down, and all of a sudden there goes all that momentum that you're building up on defense.
Yeah, those plays are tricky, man. They scare you with a running quarterback. Now, listen, here's the stats on Caleb Williams. He's got 21 carries for $113. He's got one big run. He's got a 24-yard run. So he's not. We're not talking about Lamar Jackson here. I don't even think we're talking about Patrick Mahomes here. The amount of runs that he's had, but 21 is significant enough in a 5-game span. He's gonna tuck it about 4 times a game right now. Passing-wise, he's at 62.9% clip, which isn't bad at all for a young quarterback, I think, especially with them not being a high-flying offense just yet. 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's been sacked 17 times. So the offensive line is where this is at for the Jags, defensively, what they have to do, because obviously 17 sacks. For reference there, Trevor's been sacked 12 times this year. And DeAndre Swift is not running it great. He's running at 3.2 yards a clip. So, again, those are things that speak to the offensive line, Austen, that's probably where you can attack this football team. That front four is going to have to play well. And we'll see if the Jags are able to neutralize. And really the big thing for me is when you're playing really now back-to-back quarterbacks. Drake May's going to start against Houston, and then he's going to likely start against you in London next week at Wembley. When you're playing these young quarterbacks, you have got to be able to force them into some mistakes. Like this has to feel, to me, this feels like it's got to be at least a 2-turnover game for Caleb Williams. Because the Jags are due, first of all. They have to start impacting the football game with turnovers on defense. And the recipe usually is, okay, let's go take advantage of a young player who's only played a handful of games in the league.
No, without a doubt. Brent, I want to ask you this question because to me, this game's about momentum, right? Like the Jaguars found something now on offense, right? And obviously the Bears have found kind of their own magic now against the Carolina Panthers. Congratulations. There's momentum brewing on both teams. Do you think, is this a good thing? And I get like this is always going to happen because, it's England and this is what the Jaguars do. They go to the UK, and I think fans have finally accepted it. But do you want to see this team go to the UK now after finding some magic on offense from getting momentum? Or would you, I think we would all agree we'd rather see them play, in Jacksonville again. But, do you think it's not maybe the most opportune time to go to the UK now since they kind of finally found something on offense?
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think so. I don't think that way, I guess. Let's just say. I get what you're saying. Like last year they went 1-2 and then they go find yourself on that trip. But But I think it just worked out that way. Again, those are storylines that like, you come up with something in your mind why it changed. Well, it's like, well, that 10 days really made a difference. And I said this yesterday on the show. Part of the reason that 10 days made a difference, Austen, is because they won the first game over Atlanta. If they don't win the first game over Atlanta, I'm not sure the rest of the 5 days there before the next game would have made that much of a difference. So you got to, the context of that to me is important. I do think this. This is a football team, and I understand it from a fan base perspective. It's different. But this is a team that kind of embraces this. They embrace the London stuff. The people that have been here before, I don't know about the newcomers like Armstead and Darby and other players, but the players like Trevor and everybody else, they seem to embrace it. They don't mind it, and they've got the right mentality for it. And so you know this about sports, man. If you can get back there and go, it's like Trevor playing against the Colts, right? Trevor got his first win in London against the Dolphins. Last year's team found themselves, had a good experience over there, won a couple of games. They feel good at the moment. And quite frankly, I think it actually is an opportune time to maybe get on a little bit of a roll because of the way they feel about things, when they are over there. And that's not to suggest, get into all the stuff of, well, they can win over there and they can't win over here. And, well, maybe they should play 6 games. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just trying to get into the psyche of this football team and where they could be at. So I got to believe that's the way they're going to look at this one too, Austen. But I'll repeat myself here. It all depends on what happens in that first game. If it's a good trip over there, the rest of it, because you can easily, if you lose and you go 1-5 now on the season, by Thursday of next week, they ain't gonna like being in London. I can guarantee it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. You'd always want to see them play the Patriots first, right, and then the Bears, because I think the Patriots obviously is the easier matchup to gain a little more momentum. Yeah, you're not wrong there. I think it's something that we don't really talk about a lot because this is kind of new of playing, one home game and one away game in the UK. But it is a great point where if the first one doesn't go well, does that snowball to, man, I just want to get the heck out of here, and get back to my family and get back to the States. It's a good point that I think we don't really talk a lot about just because, it went so well last year, right? So once again, we'll see what happens this year, but you're having a Bears team right now and once again, I'm not like the finger's not on the pulse in terms of this fan base on Twitter or anything. I feel like people are expecting the Jaguars to win this game in pretty easy fashion because, it's the Jaguars in London. They know how to play in London, and it's against the rookie quarterback and all this stuff. But I do think, and I agree with you here, I think it could be a tough game for the Jaguars.
Here's the thing. Here's what I feel this is totally just a gut feeling about the fan base. And maybe the Storm's got something to do with this, and everybody's kind of thrown out of whack a little bit. But I feel like they don't care if they play on the moon right now. I think this fan base is thirsting for this team to get back in it somehow. Give them a little bit of hope here in Jacksonville from a fan base perspective that we can trick ourselves into thinking they can still make a playoff run or they can gather this thing, they can turn it around. Because the one thing we all know, from Shad Khan to the fans to us, we're going to have Clay Harbor on in just a couple minutes, we all know this team is better than 1-4. Like, they are a better football outfit than 1-4. We've seen 1-4 when it's not good. This is not it. And so I think this fan base isn't even caught up in the London stuff as much as usual. I don't think they care where they play right now. I think they just want to see a couple of wins so you can get us back into it because this was supposed to be a year to enjoy, not a year to just, oh, my gosh, here we go again. So I think that's my temperature on the fan base. What I can't figure out is if I even feel if they're going to sweep this or not. I don't think they've given up enough evidence. I've been saying this all week. Indy is a perfect remedy for this football team for whatever reason. Sports are about matchups. They like that matchup. I don't know if Trevor just did that because he loves playing against Indy or if he found something. I don't know if the Jags offense just did that because they love playing against Indy or they found something. We're going to find out over the next couple of weeks if they found something. Here's what we did find before we head for a break. Tyson Campbell, the 21-day practice window has been open for Tyson Campbell, so that's good news. Now, that does not mean he'll play. In fact, he won't play on Sunday. He won't play probably, I don't even know if he'll play next week. We'll see. But that looks like they'll bring him to London now, and he'll get on the practice field. We saw this with DeJuan Smoot last year, I think it was, when they opened the window for him, and he actually played, I think, in that second game against Buffalo last year. So we keep an eye on next week, I would say, against the Patriots, and then definitely the following week with the Green Bay Packers, as they'll be very careful to bring Tyson Campbell back too early like they did a year ago. All right, let's take a timeout. We come back, we'll have Clay Harbor on. He's knows all about the Chicago Bears, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And Brian Thomas running away from the Indianapolis Colts. That picture was awesome, by the way. Just a great, great picture. Marcel Robinson taking that shot. Yeah, man. We hope there's more of that. Maybe that's a little symbolic, that picture, for years to come. They'll be throwing that one back maybe 5, 6, 7 years after a couple of Pro Bowls for Brian Thomas Jr. That was a cool picture to see. We'll be right back. I never know where Clay Harbor is. I think he's in Chicago. And we got the trio, a couple former Jags and me. What's happening, Clay?
Not a lot, guys. Appreciate you having me on, man. And, Austen, me and Austen, I know every time we talk to him, we always tell the story. Back in college, we played against each other our senior year. And the Missouri State Bears, my Missouri State Bears, got the W.
Yes.
So I always have to bring that up every time I see Austen.
And I'm always going to bring up that I had 3.5 sacks, Clay. Now, that wasn't your fault because I think you're more of a receiving tight end than obviously a blocking tight end. But I have to bring that up as well.
Hey, you played very well, but the victory was ours. And you're right.
It was.
Back in college, I was a receiving tight end. I got to go out on every route. It was a beautiful life. But then in the NFL, man, you got to do pretty much everything if you want to last in this league. And they taught me pretty quickly that I had to learn how to actually block people. So.
Well, and hey, here's the deal, by the way, too. Clay Harbor almost turned into a linebacker with Chip Kelly in Philly, and Austen was almost a tight end as well, like coming out of high school. So, yeah. So you guys almost did play other positions.
Yeah, that was always fun. Chip Kelly, Clay, we're gonna move you to linebacker today. Come into that meeting. I'm like, all righty then. I've never played defense in my life. This was my 4th year, Austen. This wasn't a rookie coming into the NFL. It's my 4th season. 4 years of playing tight end. I'm a vested veteran that he's telling to move to linebacker, okay? I'm like, okay, maybe if this was my rookie season, I'll try it. This guy has, some new and exciting thoughts and stuff. But at that point, I'm like, man, just get me the heck out of here.
No, I mean, listen, with all due respect to Chip Kelly, I think Chip Kelly is great at a lot of things. I'm not sure if picking defensive players might be one of them. So that's kind of crazy that he alluded to you playing linebacker, man. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I don't think that's why Chip worked. That's the way Chip worked, right? He was like, forget about defense. Let's just go score points.
Yeah, I think he's still doing that today.
Crazy enough. All right. Hey, let's talk about this game, Clay. Wanted to get you in. Obviously, you pay attention to the Jags down here. I see you tweeting about them and keeping an eye on them. We know you keep an eye on the Eagles, too. Eagles and Jags kind of have struggled, really, ever since last December. But Chicago has not. Defensively, really, they have turned it up. Austen and I just spent the first 20 minutes of the show. I'm worried about this Chicago defense. They have been in a groove. Haven't been a big Eberflus fan, quite frankly. I thought they maybe should have reset things when they were going after that number 1 overall pick. But the defense has been consistent since really going back to last November, outside of a couple of Detroit games. What are they doing so well on defense?
You're exactly right, Brent. And Caleb Williams in the offense is getting a lot of the attention because obviously he's Caleb Williams, the number 1 pick, the Hollywood, USC, everything going on there. But the real story to this season has been how good the defense is. The stat that almost seems unreal is the last 11 games. The Bears have allowed, the only team in the NFL right now, haven't given up over 21 points. So if the Bears score 21 points, game over. An 11-game span here. This isn't a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9. This is an 11-game span. They haven't given up over 21 points. Right, they're 3rd in the NFL in turnovers right now, and that's coming off the back of the last 6 weeks last year where they were number 1 in the NFL in turnovers. So they have a span of 11 games of really good football. They averaged 15.5 points a game during the last 6 games of last season. This year, they're averaging 17 points a game. Once again, that 11-game span where this team is just playing great defense. They had some big-time acquisitions this year that kind of flew under the radar. Kevin Byard, couple big interceptions, has been a tackling machine. But the one thing that is a little worrisome for the Bears is Jaquan Brisker. He might be the defensive MVP so far this season, a guy that's extremely underrated at the safety position. The Bears' leading tackler this season forced a big fumble last week, but in doing so, he landed in concussion protocol, self-reporting concussion symptoms, which is his third since he's been with the Bears. Each time he's missed at least 2 games. So Jaquan Brisker will be out. Jonathan Owens, a.k.a. Jonathan Biles, Simone Biles' husband, might be getting the start this year. So that would this game. So that'd be interesting. He hasn't had much play time besides special teams this year. But you said it, Brent. This defense is special. Montez Sweat's been good. The linebackers are great. But the real stars of this defense is the defensive backfield.
I mean, Clay, when this schedule got released, we're talking about the NFL preseason. I think a lot of people in Jacksonville said, okay, you're going to the UK, you're playing Chicago first and the Patriots then. Okay, this could be a 2-game stretch here where we have a lot of success. And now all of a sudden we're seeing it's like, all right, Chicago might be kind of the real deal, especially after that Carolina Panthers game. And obviously the Jaguars haven't really reached expectations yet. In your eyes, from where you were in the preseason to where you are now about this Bears team, are they reaching expectations? Are they underachieving? Are they overachieving? Or they kind of thought, are they where you thought they were going to be?
I think they're right where I thought they would be. I picked them at 9-8 this year as a solid team, and I know that Caleb had a great preseason, and people are salivating, thinking he's already the next coming of Joe Montana. And I knew it was going to be a process, and even now he's missing some throws. He's missing. I'm watching the All-22. He's missing a guy here. His eyes don't look like they're in the right place. Maybe somebody runs the wrong route. He's a little slow on the read. He's still got a little bit of that college in him, where there's maybe a guy open, but he's going to run around and try to make a play. But everything considered, where they are now as opposed to where they were 3 games ago, I mean, this thing is just on a trajectory flying high. I mean, they're playing complementary football. The run game has really picked up. They had the worst run team in the league the first 3 weeks. And these last 2 weeks, DeAndre Swift has had 285 yards from scrimmage and has really picked things up. And to me, it's not a surprise that Caleb Williams has these 2 great games when the running game gets going. It's a symbiotic relationship here. Once you start running the football, that opens up a lot of things in the pass game. DeAndre Swift, to me, is still leaving a little bit of meat on that bone with some of these runs. They got a good number 2 running back, Roschon Johnson from Texas. Second-year man, was a draft pick last year behind Bijan Robinson over there at Texas for 4 years. But these 2 running backs, if you can slow them down and make the Bears a passing team, and I know the Jaguars are struggling against the pass right now. I've seen it and watched, and Joe Flacco just shredded him. It's like, come on, this guy needs a wheelchair to get on the field. He's so old. But if you can slow down this run game and make them a passing team, that's where the Bears get into trouble.
Yeah, Clay Harbor with us. Austen Lane out in Las Vegas. Clay in Chicago. Brent Martineau here on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. Bears and Jags coming up on Sunday. It's a fascinating game in a lot of ways because if you missed the stat that Clay just shared, 21 points is the magic number. They don't give up more than that in Chicago. The Jags haven't scored much more than that. 2 occasions now in the last, I think it's 10 games, maybe 11 now, that they've scored over 21. That was against Carolina last December, and just Sunday against the Colts. So the Jags have had problems executing and getting the number of points that they need. So this is going to be interesting to see which gives or what gives. And if it doesn't give, the Jags are going to be in trouble, of course, on Sunday. Clay, how do you view what's going on in Jacksonville right now? Trevor got off to a slow start. Obviously, a lot got remedied on Sunday with that performance, but you also have Tank Bigsby playing really good football. Evan Ingram, we think, will come back this week. Brian Thomas Jr., they have a lot of good stories despite their 1-4 record. It's a little bit of a why is this going on here in Jacksonville type thing right now, Clay. What do you see from outside?
Isn't Campbell coming back soon too?
They just announced that he's coming into the 21-day window. They just announced that in the last 10 days. But I don't think he'll be back Sunday. I think he'll be back maybe against the Patriots, but I would look at him more toward Green Bay.
After they come back stateside. Yeah. So for me, it's been a couple of things, right? And some of it, I mean, it's just bad luck. I mean, you look at the Miami Dolphins game. I know you guys probably talked about that on nauseam. This game, you are slamming the door closed. You are running in the end zone from the 1. You're at the 1 yard line and you fumbled 2 plays later, touchdown to Tyreek. You want to say, I know, Austen, you want to say, hey, you got to be able to come back from plays like that. But that is one freak accident right there away from a game. And it feels like there's been a lot of that besides the Bills game. That was just a straight up beatdown, right? That was just ugly. There was really nothing to take from that.
Yeah.
But it's been tough. You have some key injuries there. And Trevor has been missing guys. He hasn't been the guy that you want him to be. He looked really good against the Colts, I'll say that. And hopefully he can keep that going. But, overall, I think they're heading in the right direction. Tank Bigsby, does he get carries over Travis Etienne? I mean, is he going to be the number one back? That's interesting. And this D-line, this defense I thought was really going to be kind of a defense where you can lean on people this year and not just an okay defense. I thought they were going to be the group with Ryan Nielsen coming in. And then you got Trayvon and Josh Hines Allen coming off the edge, Eric Armstead, Devon Hamilton. You got all these guys, and you still got Foye coming back, Chad Muma, you got Devin Lloyd, like those guys in the box, those linebackers and defensive linemen. I thought they were just going to take over games this year. And that just hasn't happened. They've been instead of being a real weapon, they've been a detriment. And that's something. And I know I'm an offensive guy and the offense has to get better, but with this team, with the new coordinator, with the guys that you have, Trayvon and Josh Allen, I thought this defense was just going to be wreaking havoc on teams and we're going to be closing out games. So to me, if you can get this defense playing, I think the offense will come around as you get more guys back, and then you'll see an improvement leading into the rest of the season. Obviously, I don't know if that'll be enough.
Well, and Clay, you mentioned it. It's about playing complementary football. And I think what worries me more than anything about this matchup coming up Sunday is the fact that DJ Moore is a game record. He's an X factor. And this guy has explosiveness written all over him. And we see a Jaguars secondary right now that is very porous in terms of surrendering the big play. We saw Alex Pierce, I don't think anybody had that dude in fantasy last week, and he absolutely went on. What is DJ Moore capable of? I mean, because I've seen a couple Bears games, but I haven't watched it closely like you have. I mean, are they trying to force feed him the ball now? Are they running gadgets with him? Is he in the slot? Is he in the outside? Like, are they trying to get him the ball, Clay?
Yeah, and they've been struggling down the field. I mean, Caleb Williams, I had the numbers. I was trying to look for him real fast, but early in the season, they could not buy a bucket in anything downfield passing. But the last two games, they have started – perfect timing for the Jaguars. They've started hitting these downfield throws. And you got Keenan Allen, who's more of that possession guy. He's going to do the option routes inside. He's great at that, the intermediate throws. But DJ Moore is that downfield guy that you look at him, you don't think this guy isn't that tall. I mean, he's fast. He's 4'4" guy, but he's not super. But he just makes plays downfield. He just goes up, gets the ball. He's a great route runner, and he knows how to get the ball. Right here is a stat that will kind of tell you the trajectory of this Bears team, right? The first 10 quarters of Caleb, he had a 57% completion percentage, a 0-3 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 57 passer rating. His first 10 quarters of play. The last 10 quarters that he's played, he has a 70% completion percentage, a 5-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 110 passer rating. So this guy, the last 10 quarters, has been playing high-level football. I don't know what happened. I don't know what just clicked. I know it doesn't just click, but for whatever reason, he's been able to get downfield against the blitz. I mean, he's been incredible. I had another against the blitz. The last two games, he's 17-19 for 200 yards.
Wow.
Before the first three games, he completed 42% of his passes. But 17 for 19 for 200 yards the last two games against the blitz. And obviously he's playing against some of the worst defenses. The first two games of the year, he's going against the first and the fifth overall defense. I mean, that also has something to do with it. Last week he's playing against the Carolina Panthers, who were given open tryouts just to try to get a guy in the field to roster. I mean, they're just decimated with injuries. So that has to do with some of who you're playing, but he has improved a lot, and the downfield passing is definitely something to worry about.
All right, so what do you like here? Do you like before we let you go, you think that trend continues? Do you think Nielsen dials something up? I mean, the offensive line of the Bears is not great. I mean, so that's the Jags front could attack that if they bring their A game. We think the Jags need to run the football against a susceptible defense of the Bears in that area. How do you think this does play out over in London with a desperate Jags team, quite frankly, to get back in this thing, and a Chicago team feeling some pretty good momentum right now at 3-2?
Yeah. If I'm Doug Peterson or Press, who's calling the plays? Is it Doug or Press?
I did not set that up.
We don't.
I promise.
It's kind of like American Idol. I think we just kind of vote. You know, we call in and vote.
We don't even know right now.
I have no idea. Play.
Press is calling the plays.
Press is calling the plays. All right.
Yeah.
So if I'm Press Taylor and I'm looking at this Bears team, the defense, this Bears defense is great, but against the run, they are susceptible. You can run the ball against this team. They haven't stopped it. Against the Panthers, obviously they had to get away from the run because the Bears forced 3 turnovers and the Panthers forced 0. Okay, so when you start giving the ball up, you find yourself getting behind. Okay, now we got to pass the ball. But they didn't even stop the run against the Panthers. They've never stopped the run this year. The only time they stopped the run when the other team had to get away from it. So if the Jaguars can stay ahead of the chains, if they can stay ahead on the scoreboard where they can run consistently, you kind of keep this defense at bay because they're really good when you start throwing the football. But to get my pick, man, I've been going back and forth with this one. I think this is an absolute pick 'em. Trevor had a good game last week. Caleb coming in high. I just think the Jaguars know how to travel to London. I played in London 3 times, and it does matter the more you do it. I remember the first time I was out there, I'm wide-eyed. I don't really know what I can't set up my routine. Jaguars do this every year, right? This is something that by the time the third time I'm out there, I'm like, okay, I have my routine. I'm familiar with this trip. I know what to expect. And that's huge when you actually have something to go off of. I know what this field looks like. I know what this locker room looks like. I know how it's going to feel out there as far as condensation. I know how it's going to feel out there making cuts. I've done it before. So just because of that, when they do it every year, they were there last year, I'm going to go with the Jaguars in a very, very tight game. I think it's going to be, low scoring 21-17 type ball game.
All right, man. Hey, great to see you, Clay Harbor. You're not going over there, right, at all?
No, not going over there. I'll be back here talking about it, though.
That's good stuff. You're all over the place. Great to see you. And, hey, let's check in again, maybe before the Eagles game, Sunday night football game coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, sounds good to me, guys.
And it's time for our Bold City Heating and Air Bold Take. BoldCityAC.com, by the way. Prepare your home for the holidays. Ensure your heating system is in top shape before the cold sets in, as the weather will shift. 24/7, fast and reliable, Jackson Row grown, family owned and operated. You can schedule now at boldcityac.com or give them a call at 904-966-4405. Here's the deal, man. You can't ignore the numbers, and I know you're not in love with a lot of the numbers, but look at these numbers when it comes to Tank Bigsby and what they say. The bottom line is he's averaging 8 yards a carry, okay? And that alone says a lot. But then there's all these other metrics that says when he's on the football field, the Jaguars are performing a lot better. So we know they have to continue to play Bigsby. That's common sense. Like if all of a sudden they just give him 5 carries, or we're like, what the heck are you doing? He is going to continue to get part of the workload. I think the question is, as big of an ETN fan as I am, and I am a big one, he has to probably get more action until these numbers start to come down a little bit. You have to ride these kind of numbers and the hot hand that he has to some degree, even if it's not just in a single game, but it is week to week. How much more, though, do you give the ball to Tank Bigsby right now, Austen?
I mean, you give the ball to Tank Bigsby until he proves that, that's not a good decision. And listen, take the analytics off the table real quick. What are your eyes telling you, right? And when you talk about explosive plays in the run game, when you talk about vision, Tank Bigsby has it right now, and I've said this many times, you have to roll with the hot hand. And it's nothing against Travis Etienne, because I'm a big Travis Etienne guy as well. Brent, heck, in the offseason we're talking about, do they re-sign him? Do they work out some kind of extension? Because they're paying Tyson Campbell. They paid Trevor Lawrence. They paid Joshua Hines-Allen. Do you want to pay Travis Etienne? This guy's been one of the most dependable things on this offense since he got here. And now it's nothing against him, but he's kind of an afterthought because what we've seen from Tank Bigsby. So, yeah, I'm not saying give Tank Bigsby, 20 carries a game now, but you have to keep on incorporating, right? Because he's earned that opportunity. And from a team that preached, whoever has good practices is going to be playing, it's going to be this player or this player starting, in the preseason. If that's what you preach, give him the ball, man, because the guy, frankly, has earned it. And Casey Kurtz, I know you're listening, by the way, too. My big, bold prediction of Tank Bigsby rushing touchdowns over Travis Etienne. Don't want to say we're getting there yet, but people better start feeling a little uncomfortable around there, Brent, because we're going towards that direction.
Never been more comfortable. Very comfortable in the Tank Bigsby situation. It's week 5. I'm not concerned.
Did we just? Oh, I thought you froze.
Sorry, something just happened with.
Well, hey, I thought Casey did that. Casey's like, hey, you're going to call me out. I'm going to freeze your ass.
No. No, don't know how to do that. I'm just trying to pick up kickers in fantasy football.
Yeah, that was pretty peculiar how it just it's been perfect the whole show. I call out Casey for a couple seconds, and all of a sudden I'm in no man's land. I'm in purgatory, just waiting to get back on the show.
Yeah, you're kind of in and out of purgatory right now, at least on the phone. It looks like so, but we can hear you. We'll keep up with you. 33rd team, by the way, sharing this, and we borrowed from them. Guys, what would be crazy about your touchdown thing is if it comes down to like one and it's the ETN fumble against Miami. That's the difference between whoever leads in touchdowns. That could be pretty wild. But and Casey might have to jump in here too if Austen keeps freezing. But the idea that Bigsby has all these explosive plays, because again, worth noting, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day how they got there, because if you just keep chipping away, you get explosive plays sometimes. But he had a 19-yard run and a 65-yard run, really skewed the numbers the other day. Jags were not running the football very well. They've run the football better in the first 4 games overall than they actually did in this game. But my view of Bigsby, Austen, has been, okay, he's going to be your 4-yard guy and push the pile forward and your short yardage guy, and he's going to be that tough run dude. And by the way, ETN can run in between the tackles. We're very impressed with ETN's tough running ability over the last couple of years. I don't know if I expected these kind of explosive plays. We're talking about a 58-yard run last week, a 65-yard run, the 19-yard run, a 28-yard catch on a screenplay. I was not thinking that way for Tank Bigsby. Were you?
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect to Tank Bigsby, I almost thought that you were getting another version of James Robinson, which, can be a compliment, but also, when we talk about James Robinson, it's like, yeah, the guy, his rookie year, I mean, essentially he replaced Leonard Fournette, and the team said, we don't need you, Leonard. We have James Robinson here. And, he was a great running back when he was healthy, but they didn't have the breakaway speed that you wanted to see out of a running back. That's kind of what I thought Tank Bigsby might have been when they first drafted him now. And why was I wrong? Because the dude's got breakaway speed. I mean, and he can break tackles. Like you saw it against the Colts where, they kind of, I don't say they had him dead to rights because it would have been a hard tackle to make, but they had an opportunity to make a play on Tank Bigsby, a little stiff arm or a little shoulder, and he's 88 out the gate. So I think it is something to be said in terms of being an explosive player, but also not being afraid to lower your shoulder and deliver some contact. And it's like I alluded to on Monday. If they can keep on getting him involved in the pass game, well, now you got something, right? Because I think right now in this Jaguars team, it's almost like, all right, Tank Bigsby's in the game. We know what they're going to do here, right? They're probably going to run the football or, maybe dump it to him. Travis Etienne's in the game. Yeah, it could be a couple more wrinkles, right? It could be a screen. It could be a wheel route. It could be a pass. It could be a run. So I think the more and more that they can kind of cater to Tank Bigsby, giving him some more, whether it's maybe getting a wheel route involved. Maybe, I understand he's not probably the best pass blocker, but like have him go out on some kind of route. Keep defenses guessing, right? And that's going to be the biggest thing right now because when Tank Bigsby's in the game, you kind of know what the Jaguars are probably going to try to do with them.
Yeah, and you said it. Like, listen, that third down stuff is real stuff. Like, they don't trust the young backs to do that. There's a lot going on on third downs. And especially when the Jags are struggling there. That's why Dearness Johnson's in there, and it makes some sense. So, but, again, the explosives. I'll just say this. You talk about eyes. The 65-yard run, if you go back and look at that, there's pressure on that outside. He makes that one cut inside, but his acceleration to move across the field is really impressive. He had a 5-yard run I don't know if it was later in the game or earlier in the game. I think it was a little bit earlier than that 65-yarder. And he kind of cut across, and I was like, okay, stop running horizontal. But even on that one, he ran for like 4 or 5 yards. I was like, well, there was a burst there. I just didn't expect to see as much burst from Tank Bigsby because maybe the nickname or just because we thought he'd be the short yardage guy. I think we kind of paint our own perceptions sometimes, and then we see something different. And really the opposite has happened with ETN. I actually thought we'd see a lot more explosiveness out of ETN in his career in Jacksonville. And he hasn't necessarily been like explosive. He has been pretty steady and pretty good. And he can be explosive, but it's not every highlight you see of ETN is explosive. In fact, last week I thought the underrated part of the Houston game, now going back a week, was that he gave this team a little bit of toughness, a little bit of, hey, we want this game. Like we want to. He finished a couple of those runs, if you remember, against Houston, like head down and plowed through guys. And I thought that was pretty significant. You could see the effort from ETN. He can be a physical running back, and I don't think people give him credit for that. And I'm starting to think now we're not going to give like the credit to Tank about the explosive nature of his game. One more question on the running back stuff, Austen. Can you get them both on the field? I don't know. I don't think we've seen that. Have we seen them both on the field at the same time? Can you do that? And if you can, why aren't they doing that?
I mean, it's a good question, Brent. Can you put them both? Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can. I feel like, and like I have to go back and like look at the stats and everything. I can't remember if Doug Peterson was there, with Sproles was there, but I feel like I remember seeing a couple 2-back sets when Doug Peterson was with the Eagles. Like, don't quote me on that. I don't have anything to back it up with, but I feel like I remember seeing that. You could do that, Brent, but once again, like, how much of a receiving threat right now is Tank Bigsby? Like, I mean, I can see like maybe like a goal line situation. You have them both back there. Do you run a little wheel route to Travis Etienne? Do you hand the ball off? That could keep the defense on their heels a little bit. Like, it makes sense, right? And once again, it's more of an exotic look that you want to see from hopefully a progressive offense here, getting some more momentum. So I'm not opposed to that. I just want to say though too, with Tank Bigsby, that can't be stated enough. I think last year when we saw his rookie year and people kind of fell off the wagon a little bit with him, was just like, you saw a guy who, it was like, all right, this is my hole. I have to go in the hole, lower my shoulder, and get a couple yards, right? And like that was kind of his MO. And he's showcased this year, whatever it was, the off-season work, maybe just getting more comfortable watching film, but his vision, Brent, even like when the hole's not there, he'll create his own lane, right? And that's something that you didn't really see last year from him. So like, it can't be stated enough of just, once again, whether it's the work in the offseason, the mental game, whatever he's done, it's evident that he's taken leaps and bounds forward to being a pretty damn good running back in the league. Now, I get it. The sample size is still a little small, and teams are still learning to play against him. But what we've seen so far, it's almost night and day from what we saw as him from a rookie.
Listen, I think it's part of the whole story, right? I mean, you go back to last year, he really had some fluky stuff happen. But regardless, because of the fluky stuff, he still lost his confidence. And quite frankly, they lost confidence in him. Like, they won't say it out loud, and he won't say it as an athlete. He'll probably admit now that he wasn't as confident as he could have been. But, like, they won't say they lost confidence. They lost confidence in him. And quite frankly, so did everybody. But we lost confidence in Tank Bigsby out of some fluky plays if you really go back and look at it and how the turnovers came. But it just couldn't get out of it. And we said it all offseason. Listen, this is important for him to get off to a good start. And he got off to a good start in the preseason. When he touched the ball, it was a good start. When he touched the ball against Miami, good start. And he continues that good start. It is like he has recouped all that confidence that made him a good player and a third-round draft pick. Now, I'll also say this. I wasn't a huge fan, and I'm not going to – it looks like it's working out. I was not a huge fan of them at all, taking him in the third round. I didn't get the selection, quite frankly. A lot of people have said that about Brent and Strange in the second round. I got that one way more than I got the third-round Tank Bigsby pick. But they did, and it looks like it's now paying dividends. And as we've mentioned now, that draft class, Anton Harrison, Brent and Strange, Tank Bigsby, and Ventrell Miller, those first four guys, and I would throw Monteric Brown on the back end of that draft class. Now you're starting to get some really good productivity. out of that 2023 draft class. So we'll see what the Jags continue to do with the situation. It's one to watch. And again, we're not this is something they're going to have to delicately handle. They need, I think, both guys. They do. But it's hard to ignore right now what Tank Bigsby's doing with the football and what they are doing with him on the field. This is the old plus minus in the NBA right now. Like, I don't know if you can ignore that if you get enough of a sample. 1 game sample, okay, whatever it is, what it is. 5 game sample, 7, 8 game sample, that's real stuff. And quite frankly, simply, if that guy's carrying it and he's getting 8 yards a touch, well, give him the damn ball and see what happens. Make him stop him. And, by the way, one more thing. This is a Chicago defense that gives up the run. So this can be a Tank and Travis kind of day in London against the Chicago Bears, Austen, and just feed both of those guys the ball, and I'd be okay with it as long as Travis is healthy enough to do so.
Of course. Brent, let me ask you this real quick. What percentage of share do you want to see between Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne? Do you want to see 50-50? Do you want to see 60-40 for Travis Etienne? Do you want to see 60-40 for Tank Bigsby? You want to see 7? In your opinion, what would the perfect share be for these two running backs?
I think it was first. I don't know if it was Shipley. I think John Shipley might have put this out, and I retweeted it. Was the snap count the other day? Mm-hmm. And I think Bigsby had one more snap than Etienne. I think that was the first time that's happened in his career that he had more snaps than Etienne. So let's just say in that instance it was 50-50. Now we're trying to figure out why was Travis out of the game late in the game. If it was the shoulder, then you would suspect that maybe it would have been more like 30-23 or something like that instead of 23-22 if that was the number. I don't know if those are the specifics. But I would say right now, Austen, I can't knock them if Tank Bigsby, with the shoulder injury to Etienne and the production to Tank, is more like 60-40 Tank. Like I still think you come out of the, I think what you do is you come out of the gates with Etienne because he's your starting back. And I don't want that narrative. And like Doug said, he's our number one guy. And quite frankly, Doug can't say he's our number one guy and then come back the next week and not start him, right? If he's healthy. Like, you've got to be able to come. That's not a good look. No, that's not a good look. What does it tell the team? What is it? You don't want him now. Starting to build his own narrative. You got to keep him confidence. And by the way, I think that's one of the greatest things about this last week. And Etienne, how can't you like him as a teammate and what he's saying, at least in front of a microphone? And he was mic'd up, how he feels about Tank and what he's doing. Like, that's cool stuff. So you want that good, positive vibe, that complimentary football between the two backs to continue. So I start Etienne, I play Etienne, I get Bigsby in there now. And if he continues this, you definitely ride that to maybe favor a little bit more Bigsby until the numbers start to even out a little bit more from a statistical standpoint, or our eyes tell us something different. I'm fully confident now with both. Now, we'll say this, one more thing. He's got to hold on to the football because Tank, who lost the football last year, and I'll vouch for him and say those were fluky things. He's lost the football already after runs. Him and Parker Washington are interesting to me. They may not have lost it in the play, but they lost it right after a run that became questionable. And I'll say it again, if he does not fall on that touchdown, this would have been the 19-yard one. He does not fall on the ball. They review that play, and it's a fumble in the end zone, and Indy gets the ball. He was losing that football on the way in. So I don't want to put any bad things out in the universe here, but you can't. These guys got to hold on to that thing. And overall, I know Etienne had the fumble, but he hadn't lost a ball in like 600 days. I remember going back and doing the math. Like, he hasn't lost football since his real second year in the league when he was a primary running back and he went through that bad stretch. So the Jags got to hold on to the pill is what I'm getting at here.